Welcome everybody to the Technical Advisory Committee meeting. This is August 20th, 2024. We're going to kind of rock and roll through the agenda. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody see that screen?
Yep.
Okay, good. Guidelines, overview, and scope. We always kind of go through this. We've only got one guest today, and she's a special guest, and I'll introduce her in just a second. The agenda, I want to kind of talk, like I said, we've got Megan Yonke with the governor's office here. She is the representative for housing within the governor's office, and she's going to visit with us a little bit. I want to talk about a slight tweak I made to the bonding requirement for manufacturers. And then I want to make sure everybody's aware of HB 241036 regarding taxes on modulars, and then red line rules, kind of where we are on that, and then next steps and wrap up. So with that said, I'm just going to introduce Megan and give her some time. Megan, you're welcome to stay for the entire meeting if you want to. I'm going to stop my share real quick so I can see everybody. But if you want to kind of introduce yourself, and I've been fortunate enough to be with Megan in a bunch of meetings this year. She is really diving deep into all the details of affordable housing, workforce housing, and manufactured housing. And so I think she may even be going to the RMHA conference tomorrow. Megan?
Hi, I'm not going to make it to the conference tomorrow, Sam, but thanks for putting that in my mind. I'll just send my condolences. Well, nice to meet everyone. Thanks for inviting me into your space. I'm Megan Yonke, Governor Polis' Senior Housing Policy Advisor. I've been in the office here since January, and my background before this was in local government at the City and County of Denver, doing housing finance, shelter, and housing development. Did about 3,000 units of housing while I was at the City and County of Denver for 6 years. And then before that, had various nonprofit and real estate development roles before joining the city. So really grateful to be here. And my purpose for being here is the governor is very in tune with going into next session on what we can do to streamline processes, reduce regulation, get more housing now, especially in the modular and manufactured housing spaces. And so I'm kind of all ears to you all as we're going through this process. Please feel free to reach out to me if there are ideas that come to mind, either legislative or just process improvement. I mean, Sam and folks do a great job, but just if there's anything that kind of comes to mind that we should be aware of that would change the scenario for you all to work in, would love to hear that. And also just grateful to get to know all of you.
So Megan, with that, let's go ahead and do formal introductions so you know who you're dealing with here. And I'll just call your name out. Nate, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Nate Peterson. I've been in modular housing in Colorado for coming up on 20 years now, believe it or not. And been involved with Division of Housing for about 10 of those on this committee and doing other things. Did a stint on the CHAFA board from an affordable housing standpoint, and am the CEO of one of the new modular factories that came about through Proposition 123 and IHIP. And so we're putting that together now, and just looking forward to the next couple of years. It's going to be a fun ride, I think.
Great. Dean, do you want to introduce yourself?
You bet. So I'm Dean Dalvitt. I'm principal of EV Studio. We are a multidisciplinary architecture, structure, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and civil design firm. We have a studio that specializes in design for offsite construction, have been doing that for going on a decade now. And really, becoming a group that has deep industry relationships and involvement in a lot of projects. We're headquartered in Denver, so a heat map of our work is largely the Colorado Front Range and Greater Colorado market, but we do work all over the Western United States and provide all of those services integrated, and we have a unique perspective on how these projects come together from a design perspective.
Great, Dean. We're going to go to Donnie and then Tim.
I'm Donnie Featherman. I'm the program manager for the Building Codes and Standards section. So I oversee all of our functions here for anything that's manufactured offsite.
Fantastic. Tim, then Justin.
Yeah, thank you. Tim Pate, I'm with the City and County of Broomfield Building Division. I'm the building official, have been the building official for 14 years, worked here for 24 years, and previously in Louisville as a plans analyst. And before that, I was on the other side of the table, was a contractor, residential and commercial. And I've been helping on the TAC group for quite a few years, trying to bring perspective from, I guess you might call it the enforcement aspect of when things get changed and what the codes. I'm familiar with all the codes, including the energy code and the current electric ready and solar ready code. So nice to meet you. Thanks for sitting in.
You bet. And Tim, you were also involved in Solar Ready and Energy Ready, right? Model code?
Yes, I still am on the Energy Code, Colorado Energy Code Board. So the first phase of that was to produce the Colorado Electric Ready and Solar Ready Code, which went into effect last year sometime. Broomfield, we were one of the first in the Front Range to adopt it. We adopted it effective January 1st for all new construction, residential and commercial. Now we're in the phase 2 portion, which of the state legislation, which is creating, they call it the low carbon and low energy code. And we're about a third of the way through. That's required to be done. We will be done with that by June 1st of next summer. And it is now on track to be based on the 2024 IECC with amendments kind of up and down. So it's a lot of work, but a lot of fun to see where that's going to end up based on the legislation from the state and the CEO. Thanks.
Only a true code guy would say that making new code is a lot of fun. So we're going to go with Justin and then Mike. Justin?
Justin Flucky, structural engineer, been in the modular world since 2006 and licensed since 2011.
Fantastic. And then Mike and then Tracy. Mike?
Mike Morrow. I am with Montevilla, a modular manufacturer in Nebraska. I've been in the modular business a long time. Montevilla has been shipping modular homes to Nebraska since there was a modular home program, and I've been on the TAC committee for quite a while.
Fantastic. Tracy, then Tawny. Tracy, can you unmute?
Sorry about that. Hi, my name is Tracy Manchego Baker, and I'm with Tiny Building Experts. We're just a small little family business out of Colorado Springs, Colorado. We build tiny houses. We have been blessed with the opportunity to help with a city project in downtown Colorado Springs where we placed 18 tiny houses legally with the city to allow for affordable living for some of our youth that have a high probability of homelessness. So it was a really neat project, and would love to share that with you. If you want to talk a little bit more about that, we can take that offline. But we're looking to get involved in more of those, community focused projects that are offering more affordable housing for people. These kids get to pay rent, they get 2-year leases, and there's a lot of benefits and programs that go with that. So, we found a couple of different ways through different community partners that have made an impact that way. We also build very, pretty custom, beautiful tiny houses. And we do that for people that are looking to downsize. So there's a wide variety of people that are utilizing tiny houses, people that are looking for positive cash flow on their property, to people that are just wanting to own a home one day. So you kind of see all of the different sorts of people that, buy a tiny house or, work hard to build one. So I'm here for the little guys, the small builders out there, and the one-off DIYers. Fortunately, my company was chosen, or I was chosen on the team for the TAC team. And we got, an opportunity to help write some of the rules here that we're, still ourselves as a little small business conforming to and learning to conform to as well. So, but would love to have a conversation with you, and hopefully you'll share your contact info and we'll get to reach out.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tracy. Tawny, I think you're the last one.
Hey, well, good morning, and good morning, Megan. I'm Tawny Payton, the Executive Director for the Rocky Mountain Home Association. We represent the manufactured and modular home industry in Colorado. I have been with the association since 2007, had a little break for about 18 months, but been back and active since 2011. I am not a TAC member, but I attend these meetings because they're so much fun. And I'm able to gather information from the rest of the industry to share just a variety of perspectives to help provide input that is considered when there are new rules and new codes being adopted, which I really appreciate DOLA and DOH codes and standards being so open and receptive to our input, and just understanding that every decision does have an impact on how successful we are and how just how affordable housing can be. So I'm great to be here, or I'm great to meet you. Happy to meet you. Happy to be here. I'm a little sad to hear that you're not going to be in our conference, but I'll touch base with you about that later on. But good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Tawny. Thank you so much. So Megan, I think you see we've got a pretty good mix of in-state, out-of-state representation, and Rocky Mountain Home Association does an excellent job with representing the industry. And it's a multi-state association. It's not just Colorado, which I think is another significant advantage. This is a great group and this group is not bashful. And so I'm going to give them some time to kind of talk about the modular and manufactured housing industry, and with respect to Colorado, with respect to our rules, with respect to what they see in other states, and some challenges they see coming down the road. I won't call anybody out, but we had a really in-depth discussion early in our TAC meeting this year on the sustainability and affordability of implementing IEC 2021, which is part of our state statute, right? We heard from Fading West on that. We heard from some of the other manufacturers. But guys, I'm going to just turn it over to anybody that wants to raise their hand. I'll call on you. I'll try to facilitate. But why don't you guys give Megan a kind of a background, or not a background, but some challenges that you see for Colorado modular factory built construction. Dean, you're not bashful either.
No, and certainly from our perspective, we get to play in that sandbox that includes planning and zoning and front end site design. And I got to say, I mean, we've made a lot of progress, but there's a lot of jurisdictions out there that still, I mean, frankly, don't really understand the distinction between modular and manufactured housing. They're still written in planning and zoning code that you cannot do. Like, manufactured housing is a thing that they've been regulating at a planning level for decades. and they're lumping modular into that, not understanding that modular is, you know, permanent, code compliant, IBC, IRC work, but that how do we extend a universal understanding and education to all these, you know, particularly like the rural areas, which is where we are seeing a lot of development and a lot of offsite construction in the rural areas because of labor challenges and whatnot. So it is a double-edged sword, but I would say, you know, I'd put it at the top of my list. Boy, if I had one wish for, you know, what would help expand offsite construction in our state, it would be a more universal understanding of what it is and how to administer it at a building department, you know, local building department, local planning department level.
Thanks, Dean. Who wants to go next?
I kind of want to hear what Mike has to say.
Mike.
I'll go if you want me to.
Mike Morrow, you're up.
Well, you want to hear what? So I mean, what do you want me to? You want me to tell you what the challenges are?
Yeah, what are the challenges in Colorado, and what are the challenges compared to other states? Since you're a multi-state manufacturer.
Well, I think there's a couple of unique aspects to Colorado as far as modular housing goes. And I think, you know, one of them is that at the basic level, the state's program has kind of a different system for handoff to the local jurisdictions, in the sense that, you know, as we've talked for many years, we sort of have this formulaic statutory process of where certain things are done in the factory, and then the factory construction is regulated by the state's program, you know, out into the local jurisdiction, depending on local choice over how they want to handle it through, you know, we have this new process with OC letters and some other things, but the reality is most jurisdictions, they make a handoff when it goes to the job site. So the local jurisdictions don't have the, I guess I would say, you know, authority or ability to just essentially allow the state's program or have the state's program involved beyond when it winds up going locally. I think that's number one. That creates a process that is extremely, in my opinion, hard to regulate, and it also gives a high level of stakeholder risk at the end user level due to the challenges involved with regulating that way. So I think that's really, from a process and a system standpoint, that makes it challenging first and foremost. And I also think that in many of the jurisdictions, I think years ago, the state did a very good job of establishing a hard line in the sand about what the requirement should be for permitting through the state's program. So if a local jurisdiction, they want to look for a certain type of approval document from the state to start a project locally. However, on the flip side of that, also now from a processing standpoint, modular projects oftentimes are uniquely, I don't want to say discriminated against, but they are uniquely, from a process standpoint, unable to begin in any shape or form in some local jurisdictions, because that hard line in the sand was established about what to look for from a permitting standpoint for approvals, which is a little bit unique compared to what we see. So I mean, I'd say from a challenge standpoint, those are probably two of the biggest challenges. I think the home rule design load, you know, if you're a factory, there are some challenges to that, but I think, quite frankly, the state, at the state level and the state office, and you know, if you're doing it in enough places, the home rule for design loads and the ability to kind of dictate that, that's not probably the biggest challenge. I think the other two are probably the ones that I see as the where most of the heavy lifting occurs, and where I think if you're an industry stakeholder of some kind, I think that those processing things make modular projects more complicated and more unique. And on the face of it, even if there could be some time and some money savings for modular, sometimes it's discouraging to have the other parts be so hard, so as to make it less attractive, even if there's time and money savings.
Thanks for that, Mike.
How's it?
I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
Nope, you're fine.
Okay, thanks. Just to clarify a little bit, Sam, in a piece of legislation recently, we required that locals not regulate modular or manufactured housing any more strictly than stick built. Is this just a matter of enforcement of that and capacity building of locals, or what are we seeing?
Megan, I think it's a couple things, and I think it is that if you remember, our codes and standards give us the jurisdiction over the construction of the unit, but when it goes to a local jurisdiction, they're in charge of permitting. So they have their own permitting stuff. They're gonna get a set of the construction plans to take a look at, but they are not reviewing for the construction of the unit. And I think most of the manufacturers, most of the local jurisdictions understand that. Where it gets a little more complicated is where you have things like an attached deck or a attached garage or a walkout basement, things that are outside the building envelope of the unit itself. And those are generally the authority of the local jurisdiction. Now, we have a couple cases where we've had local jurisdictions get involved with the manufacturing plants. And every time I hear about that, I contact the manufacturer and the local jurisdiction to say, what's going on here? You guys can't be more restrictive. You can't be sending your building inspectors over out of state or over to the in-state factory to be doing your own inspections. That has happened, but it's a one-off type of situation. Does that help clarify?
Yeah, it does. Is this happening a lot? Is this a common occurrence?
If you think about factory-built structures, the local jurisdictions trying to get more out of the manufacturer isn't occurring a lot, and we're all our manufacturers know if Boulder contacts them and says that they want to build to the 2024 IECC, let us know. We'll contact Boulder, and Boulder says, hey, you can't do this, right? We're building to the 2018 IECC right now, and we're going to go to the 2021. So that does happen on a frequent basis, but they understand it once we explain the statute to them. With the off-site construction or the on-site construction of things that are not within the unit, that's just normal practice now. For example, when everything was a single wide, right? Single unit, box unit was a complete unit, moved in, that was pretty clear. When you're doing and it's not the right term, but a 2-box, 3-box unit, double wide, triple wide, where those unit boxes come in, they're married together, the rafters are set separately on site. There's a lot of things that are done on site, not in the factory, that are necessary for the compliance of that unit as a dwelling. And so that's where we have the responsibility. But now, stuff like furnaces and heat pumps may be shipped in separately, and the trusses come in separately, or some of the ductwork being connected between the units and the electrical stuff. That's all for the compliance of the home. But then, you have registered sellers that will do a contract for the whole kit and caboodle. They'll do the foundation, the unit, an attached garage. And so that's where it gets a little tricky, and we have a process with the locals that they can that they know what they're responsible for and what we're responsible for. Is it an education process? Yes, it is an education process on the manufacturers, the sellers, and building codes and standards staff to really understand that, to work with that local jurisdiction and keep everybody within their swim lanes.
Yeah, and I guess maybe I wasn't totally clear the 2 points that I think that to me are the biggest challenges that I see and that I think exist. One, as Sam is talking about that process, what I'm saying is that most places we deal with, the state's program and regulatory oversight ends once it goes to the job site. The work performed on site, whether it's has to do with the compliance of the factory built structure or not, work performed on site is the jurisdiction of the locals, and therefore there's a very, I guess I would say, simple, not easy, but simple and easy to understand handoff, because whether it had to do with the factory or a guy that built the deck or whoever, once it's on site, it's under the jurisdiction of the local guy, and that there's not as much choice, I guess, and process and regulatory explanation and education, as Sam calls it, involved, because it is very simple. That's the one thing that I think is unique and uniquely challenging. And secondly, like I said, the permitting, it's not that the local jurisdictions are overdoing any additional regulating, it's that, quite frankly, they've been instructed to look for an approved set of prints. And so, to give you a comparison, if I was to go build in Omaha or somewhere, Kansas City, the other jurisdictions that are metropolitan in nature, or even a rural area somewhere else,
So I see, hang on just a second, Nate. I see Sean on the phone too. Sean, we have Megan Yonke with the governor's office, so we're kind of just, she's very interested in the challenges and the opportunities to make modular and factory built structures easier to do in the state of Colorado. So that's kind of where this chat's going. Nate, there were a couple people in front of you. I want to go to Tim real quick, and then Tawny, and then I'll come back to you, Nate.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to just bring up, I know that Sam made a comment on kind of the early discussions with our group here. The 2021 IECC is part of the package, and then also the electric ready and solar ready code that is going to be part of that package, I'm pretty certain. But with that being said, so what we've seen in Colorado over the years is we have been successfully home rule cities in the state of Colorado. And with the slowly but surely, at least on the energy code side of things, that's being taken out of our hands. State legislation and the Colorado Energy Office have created a state energy code, and with that are requiring all jurisdictions to be adopting at a certain point with certain code adoptions, et cetera. And that includes the Division of Housing group. That's why this is going to have to happen. So you don't have that ability on a local level to not do something from the state based on your code adoption. So that becomes a challenge with the manufacturers, I think, and with the electric ready and solar ready code, we've had some of that discussion. And it will certainly be the same discussion in a couple of years when the requirement for the Division of Housing to have to adopt the low carbon and low energy code, which is going to be based on the 2024 IECC, which is more restrictive than the 21 and will be actually more restrictive than the base 2024 IECC as we're seeing it go forward. So therein lies the dilemmas with, the Division of Housing and the manufacturers moving forward. So those are just my comments based on from the state standpoint and state energy code.
Thank you. And so, Tim, that it brings up a very good point. And home rule cities and counties and towns must follow our must accept our program rules. As our modular units get more advanced and the local jurisdiction, whether it's home rule or not, is still on a 2009 code or still not on a building code at all, right? There may be more disparity in the price of doing business in a modular unit versus a place where there's no building codes at all or very, very lax codes, right? So that's just something I think we're going to have to live with. So I want to go with Tawny next and then over to Tracy. And then I do want to wrap this up by about 9:45 and then jump back to regular TAC business if everybody's had a chance to speak. And Megan did put her email in the chat. Feel free to reach out with any questions and concerns, and we can have follow-on meetings if we need to. Tawny?
Thank you. So just to add to what Mike was sharing, you know, one of the regular concerns that I hear about is just the industry trying to meet the requirements of 300 something different jurisdictions. You know, it's supposed to be a statewide building code, but it's really technically not. You know, so where like people, when they live in a certain area, there are site builders that build homes, custom homes, or you know, a development. They're building for that area for the most part exclusively. They're not building for you know, home sites all over the state, whereas that's what our industry does. So when there are a variety of different building codes that our industry has to meet and build to, it makes it less efficient and more expensive for our industry. Also, the state codes versus the local codes, again, just trying to meet all of these different you know, requirements is a challenge. And also the challenge of the state and where their authority ends. I mean, the program was created so that we were a state regulated program and we built to the state requirements, but it seems like I guess the more carve outs there are specific to the more unique building codes, the less authority the state has over our industry, which makes it again challenging. Something else, you know, and I'm just rushing through a quick little list, but and I apologize, Tim, for beating up all the local jurisdictions, but also from an installer perspective, I've heard about challenges that installers have. One, with the state building or the state plumbing code rules requiring an installer to hire a licensed plumber for simple connections. I know Donnie's been working on that, trying to get that remedied, but there's some confusion with the state plumbing board as to where they feel that they can require you know, a licensed plumber and where they can't to work on our projects. You know, in some areas it is necessary and makes sense, but in other areas it does not. And then also specific to installers, some jurisdictions, even though our installer program is a state-run program where installers are licensed or certified installers or registered installers, some of these jurisdictions also require these installers to have a general contractor license, which also adds additional expenses to the installations of the homes. So I will stop there, but that's just a, you know, just a really quick, like, snapshot summary of just some of the local jurisdiction challenges that we deal with our industry.
So Tawny, thank you very much. And Megan, we have the core unit are built to the state building codes, right? But what we allow and what is in our statute is to allow local requirements to come in for wind load, snow load, winter design temperature, and then fire suppression, and now wildfire mitigation. So if those local, as we see more locals and more exceptions to building a set factory type structure, we see each construction plan has to be modified for all those different local design criteria. And so that's another, it's not a Santa Fe model or a, you know, whatever model you want to call it, Aspen Peak model or whatever it is. I mean, it is a unit that is built to a custom set of requirements around a core structure set of building codes. And that's
Yeah.
what we have talked about in the ADU bill, about possibly doing some zones and actually extending that to all the modular construction in the state. What that means, though, is that if we don't exceed the local jurisdictions, then we need to find a way for the locals to give up that right for the local wind load, snow load, fire suppression, wildfire mitigation, all those other unique requirements. And it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. I want to go to Nate, and then I want to go to Tracy.
Just really quickly, I just do want to say that the governor is very interested in getting your feedback on moving to regional models for those things and try to get as much standardization as possible, even though the standards will be higher than if you generally did it municipality by municipality, but very interested in everybody's feedback as to whether that would be cost effective or beneficial to your process.
And Megan, we did have some discussion on that, and I hope everybody here will reach out to you and say, I know the key part of that is it cost efficient, and is it make it easier to get plans approved, and a reduction in the number of plans to be developed and approved. And I hope that people can provide you numbers with that. I just don't have the numbers to share with you on that. I want to go to Nate, and then I want to go to Tracy.
Yeah, so if I were to kind of sum it up, we had put together a document, Megan, I'm guessing it probably made it to you through OEdit, but basically, kind of listed our top 3 priorities from an industry, at least ideas for them. And the biggest one is that as building has gotten more complicated in factory, there's been like what Tawny referenced as carve outs. So now we have to, the Division of Housing doesn't review our prints for fire sprinkler design in the modular building, the local jurisdiction does. And now all of a sudden, the Colorado Fire Board or whatever they are is requiring that the inspectors at the factory come under the jurisdiction of that organization versus the Division of Housing. We have local jurisdictions that want to do some level of review on the print, and we have to kind of fight them off, so to speak, from doing that. And so we have the plumbing board now saying, oh, well, we want some jurisdiction in your program as well. And what's next is the electrical board. And if that extends to, oh, well, we want your factory workers to be licensed plumbers that are doing the plumbing work, or licensed electricians that are doing the electrical work. And these are kind of the things that are coming at us right now in the industry, specifically in Colorado. And so like one of the things that I would really love to see us do is be able to just clarify in our statute that the Division of Housing's Building Codes and Standards groups has jurisdictions over all aspects of modular construction, that we don't have these, additional oversight groups that are going to really muddy the water and really slow down the production of units. And so I think that's probably number 1 on my list. The second one I would say is other states allow the use of third parties to do plan approvals. And our statute doesn't allow that the way it's currently written. And so being able to, if we're thinking about rewriting something like that, being able to integrate to it the ability for the factories to work with authorized from the Division of Housing third-party plan approval agencies to be able to just speed up, the approval process when we do have to kind of jump through all those approval hoops. And then the last thing is what you were just alluding to a minute ago, is the idea of the bands, if you will, of approval. So, if you just step back and look at like the theory of manufacturing, it's all about standardization. And right now, what we have in our state is we have a manufacturing operation that is not standardized. And so, every product that, Charlie produces at Fading West is for a specific address. And if he wants to move it one address over, like 100 feet, he's not allowed to do that. And so there's no ability right now in our state to build any type of product that would be standardized. If we could build 3 ADU models or 2 ADU models that could go to all corners of the state, we might be able to build inventory. I mean, that's what Ford does. That's what all the car manufacturers do when they're slow. They build some inventory. And so I'm looking at it more from the standpoint of a, business management tool, much less about efficiency, and so those would be kind of my top 3, is some sort of statewide approval authority, clarifying in statute that Division of Housing is the authority on modular homes, and all these other agencies and boards that are kind of coming at us. We don't have to integrate their processes into ours. And then the last one is to authorize third-party plan approval.
If I could just piggyback on what Nate just said about inventory, and we've seen this because, obviously the economic cycles of housing peak and valley on, fairly regular basis. But during the peak time, the maximum number of housing units that any factory can produce is the maximum number of housing units you're going to get from offsite construction in our state. So if the governor's office is interested in expanding or increasing the amount of offsite construction that can happen, then allowing a manufacturer to produce inventory during a downtime actually allows them to provide more housing units during an uptime when they're otherwise limited to their throughput in their factory. So, again, virtually every other example of manufacturing in the world can do that, and offsite construction is the only one that I can think of that is handcuffed to not being able to provide an inventory of product.
Right. Okay. I want to go to Tracy now.
Great, thank you. So I just always have to put it out there that, there, as a small builder, if you look at the units that we produce, we're going to be on the small side, right? We're on the micro side, meaning that our houses are extremely efficient. We haven't had a lot of paid testing, if you will, to kind of prove the efficiency or the effectiveness of, the quality IRC built, but yet on wheels, right? So we're conforming to all these new rules as little builders, and mom and pop shops, and even the DIYers. But as we start to grow into some of the later codes, like Tim was mentioning with the energy codes, some of those things kind of crush our little tiny houses, right? And they make things like lofts, not available, right? Or not being able to meet the codes, just because of, a small R value. But I don't think that we've ever really spent the time or energy into really understanding the energy efficiency of our houses. So I kind of put that out there because as we do try to standardize, for us, that's actually harder for the little guys to standardize. But at the same time, we're trying to overbuild our houses already, so that way they can withstand multiple different areas across our state as well as other states. So I just want to kind of put it out there as some of those things do affect the smaller businesses a little bit different than the bigger businesses. And so we want to, not lose sight of that as well. Because we're getting put in those big swim lanes, as you were mentioning earlier, Sam. and we don't have 3-pod houses, right? I've got 192 square feet and I'm accomplishing a lot in a small space. And so, Megan, if you wanted to know one of the biggest pain points for some of our smaller tiny houses that are truly focused on affordable living, helping take care of your aging parent, adult special needs child, all of that good stuff. These units want to go in backyards so their family can help them out. And we still have a problem with zoning. So that's one of those things that I would, pass on as one of the pain points for even people that, want to live affordably, because, I feel like that's kind of what your guys' focus is. And I totally get it, because we've been, doing this for 10 years now, and, we've seen the need for more. But a lot of people are even happy with small. And so try not to lump us into the 3-pod house, the swim lanes, because those things start to cost more money and our houses are becoming less affordable. And I've got some data that I've started to collect on, how the new rules are going to affect some of us little or small businesses. So I just kind of put that out there. I'll reach out to you, but hopefully we can connect.
I love that. I know we want to wrap up here, so I won't take any more time. I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your thoughts. Very helpful. I'm taking notes in the background as we're starting to prepare for legislative season, and some of these things are non-legislative in nature, so definitely going to follow up with Sam and folks. But as you have data, Tracy, folks on the call, any kind of data about how these processes would affect your business, would love to have that kind of information. So with that, Sam, I think I'm going to get out of your hair. Thanks all.
Megan, you're welcome anytime at this meeting. Like I said, they are not a bashful group. I think they all enjoy being heard, and that's we all want a very successful program in the state. So thank you very much for joining us. I guess we'll see you up in Blackhawk tomorrow.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Well, thank you all. Megan really does seem to get it and really does care. We're working with the governor's office closely coming up to, because it's a high priority topic for him. So again, don't feel bashful in sending her any input that you have. She is
Sam, what's the sense of, are they wanting to pursue running something?
Well, I try to avoid the legislative side from the Division of Housing perspective. Yes, that is my understanding. They are looking, they're preparing for the legislative session. So to me, that means they're trying to figure out what they're going to do.
Okay. I know you need to stay out of it until you're told to be in it, but
yeah, right.
Yep. Okay.
So, and there's not, and this isn't the first meeting that I've had with her. Like I said, she's been making the circuit. She's the governor's office has at least 2 separate meetings on with Division of Housing staff on this topic. All right, so we're going to jump back into the tax stuff. Let me see. Let me share my screen again, kind of see where we are. That's not the screen I want to share.
Sam, do you know if that list?
Yeah, it did make it up there.
Okay.
All right. You guys can see that, right?
Yep.
So I made some slight changes to the Rule 4.52 on the bonding requirements for manufacturers. I'm just not sure it was really clear. We've had 0 manufacturers send us anything with respect to bonds. And so I'm recommending a slight change to clarify. The follow-up to this then also will be to take a look at one of the things I'm thinking about is sending out an attestation sheet that says, yes, I receive deposits, or yes, I receive down payments, and they either are within the cost of materials, construction, design, and administration of specific of the specific home, or they are not. I guess we need to get a little bit better handle on this. And I know this was another discussion point for a potential change in legislation, but it has certainly not made it into any of the discussions that we've had so far. And I just wanted to see if there were any concerns with this.
No, you know, like this is really honestly, like we got this in there 2-3 years ago and almost regret that we got it in there because it doesn't work very well. And this is really covering the scenario of a retail customer buying directly from a factory.
Yep.
This does not cover business to business transactions.
Correct.
And
The
so
only
this,
thing it would be is if you got a deposit that tracks back through to a consumer, then because the goal here is if there's a non-delivery of a unit, we would call the bond to help them get their deposit back, but not from a retailer or a developer.
right.
But if that's I guess from a point of clarity here, if that's a direct from the customer deposit to a factory, would that not fall under the seller? I mean, basically, then they're a seller. They're going to have to be a registered seller. It would fall under that. And so in reality, that it's already kind of regulated. Plus, doesn't Colorado state law require that if you have a deposit direct from a customer, there's escrow requirements for that too. So I guess I feel like maybe if the intent is to regulate a factory taking deposits as a seller, they should fall under the registered seller.
Yeah, Mike, the requirement is still in there that if they're selling direct to the consumer, that they need to be a registered seller.
Right. Mike, I'm reading this a little bit closer, Sam, and it includes direct sellers. So Mike, like if you take a deposit from Alpine and Alpine doesn't need to account for that in there because they don't hold it anymore. They forwarded it on to the factory. Then that bond is protected at the factory by this language, or by that deposit is protected at the factory by this language.
Yeah, let's just say that the unit cost, that somebody gets a deposit for $100,000, they keep 20 back as a registered seller, and they send the other 80 to the manufacturer. Where's the protection for that money unless it's being used for cost materials, construction, design, and administration, right?
Correct.
Hey, Sam and everybody. So my understanding is, like, even with the word changes itself, that there's no manufacturer right now that has a bond, right? Because everybody operates as, if they're collecting money, they're going to use it for the construction. They're not holding that money for anything else other than the construction of the unit. And so we don't have anybody who's actually has a bond. As Mike was saying, if you're collecting money direct from the consumer, then you need to register as a seller, right? But I think the way this is written is more for like those manufacturers that I don't think they're even in business anymore because of the way they operated. But one of them would be like the Cabins place that just recently went bankrupt and went to court and stuff, right? Where they're collecting money from these consumers for the construction of a home, but it was for somebody else's house, right? And so this requirement is really to help protect those consumers that they're putting down payments that are in excess of what it costs to build their house, right? Because those individual manufacturers are actually using that money for another person's house. And then when they get another customer, that money would go toward this customer's house, right? So right now with this rule, there's at least the manufacturers that I know that are operating in Colorado, none of them have a bond because they don't collect money for other people's homes. They're collecting money to build this person's home, right? So the way the verbiage on it that's changed, it really doesn't affect the rule itself. And I don't think it affects any manufacturer that's currently registered with us. Unless you start changing your practices where you're using that money to build somebody else's house. Right.
Yeah, and let's face it, I told Mo, when this came up, I understand the intent is to prevent a situation like that, but at the end of the day, if somebody's out there taking, $50,000 and they take millions of dollars in deposits off of people.
Yeah. I think
Yep.
it's fine.
It's
Tracy, did you still have your hand up?
Really
Is
not
that
gonna, you're really not gonna write something to prevent that.
Did that used to be 50,000, Sam? And did that change to 100,000?
No, it's always been 100.
It's always been 100. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
The seller's bond is 50,000.
Yeah. The seller's right.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm sorry. Thanks.
You bet. All right. So with that, thank you very much. I just, Tawny brought this to my attention, and Tawny, if you feel the need to jump in a little bit more here, feel free to. But I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that there was HB 241036, which allows some exemptions from sales and use tax. And so effective January 1, 2025, to allow exemption from sales and use tax to sale, storage, usage, or consumption of a modular home or any closed panel system used in construction of a factory-built residential structure. I don't know how that affects your guys' business, but I just wanted you guys to be aware of it. Tawny, anything else that they need to know on this?
So it's a very similar exemption to what the manufactured homes, the HUD code homes already had. And they looped in the tiny homes a year or two ago, and now they're including modular. It's the state sales tax. So, similar to the HUD code stuff, new HUD code homes are exempt from state sales tax. It's only exempt at the local level if the locals adopt the exemption. So it'll apply to the modular as well. And I looked at the definitions, and it's the IRC structures. So it's a big win. It wasn't a bigger tax bill, and it made it over the finish line.
So I guess, does that affect townhouses then as well? So you can get a tax exemption for townhouses?
I think it depends on the code. So
it's IRC.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I can send you the definition, because it actually references the definition of a modular structure.
Yeah, townhouse is a IRC residential.
Yeah.
They can be built to IBC, but most of them are going to be IRC.
Yeah, residential attached is going to be a IRC building. So yeah, if that's the way it's defined, then that would be effective.
Sean, I think that's you. Do you have your hand up?
Yeah. Is there a definition of what the exemption is based upon, as far as, is it the purchase price? Is it the invoice on the home? Does it include, one of the things companies like ours, where we use a simple Form 500, is we end up lumping the sale price of the home and all the site improvements and everything into that top line number. And so we struggle all the time trying to figure out with our corporate tax department, they're charging partial taxes on that purchase price. And so there's not a lot of definition into that. And then the sales tax receipts don't allow you really to break out the top line sales price and break out, site improvements versus the house price. And so I didn't know if there was anything related to that out there or not.
Sean, I'm working with your corporate person. Her name is Connie, to
Yep.
get that piece clarified, because you're talking about all the like decks and all of that, like where does the exemption start and stop? Really is what you're
Yeah.
looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, that's and this is the same thing. It's just that what just generally when you're using standardized forms, it just doesn't allow you to break that stuff out.
Yeah.
And of course, we deal with multiple states, and multiple states have, like Texas, they don't charge they charge sales tax on the invoice of the home, not the sale price of the home. And so we've constantly got our corporate people reading into what the bill says. So any clarification, I appreciate you helping Connie get that figured out.
Yeah. So
I put a link to the bill in there, and I'm perusing it real quick, but I'm gonna depend on Tawny to work out how that works. If you
Yeah.
guys
No, I appreciate that.
Hey, Tony, do you know if that affects the tiny houses as well? Because I think tiny houses would be under the factory built structure definition.
actually, tiny home has its own definition, but it does apply to tiny homes. So it applies to HUD code, it applies to the manufactured federal code structures and tiny homes, and now it will also include modulars beginning January 1st. So the tiny homes and HUD code homes were already exempt. So what it's doing is it's replacing that language to also include modular. So the HUD code and tiny home exemption is still in effect, but then everything will be included to come January 1st.
Okay, I see at 3926, 721.
say that again, Donnie?
Yeah, the one right above what you just highlighted, manufactured homes and tiny homes.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's already in statute. And so if it's all caps, that's the new bill language. If it's in caps and lowercase, it's currently in law.
I didn't know this. I mean, this is like news to me.
And actually, like that bill was on our dossier, and I had communicated to our lobbyist that I wanted to keep an eye on it because it did include the modular tax exemption. And so we were just monitoring it, and I was willing to change our position to support if needed. I just didn't know if it would actually make it all the way through. Just because our industry is always beating the drum of parity with site built.
Yeah, right.
So I just thought, wow, how cool if it makes it all the way through. And it did. And actually, it wasn't on my radar. It was when the bill was introduced, but then Connie from the Clayton corporate office is the one that started bringing it to everyone's attention. And that's when I started digging into it again.
And so basically we're going to remove the state component, the 2.9% only. We still have all the local components, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's the 52-48 split. So it's that one.
The 2.5, 2.9 on that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Which still adds up, right?
No, that's real money.
Yeah.
Especially on the big ones.
Yep. All right, great. Let's talk a little bit about the rules. So I have been working hard on getting all the red lines in. I just sent the latest revision to Donnie to kind of proof for me. I should get those out to you guys later today or early tomorrow morning. Then I've got to get them on the website, and then I've got to I'm jumping ahead on slides, but again, we have changed almost every section of this of these rules in some way, shape, or form. So please take the time to read through and let us know if you have any questions. The sooner the better. So there's some new and revised definitions in Chapter 1. the changes to the code sets and adding the state electric ready and model ready codes and adding the 3 standards that we talked about there. There is some language in there too about if there's a conflict between standards and codes wins. If there's conflict between codes and solar, state and electric ready and model ready codes, contact us and we'll try to straighten that out for you. Chapter 3, fees are basically staying the same this year. And I was gonna just give everybody a heads up, fees are gonna have to go up next year. And I think I can squeak through this year with keeping the fees the same, but next year for sure, we're gonna have to take a look at it. One of the things that we're also getting ready to do is to start taking back plan reviews instead of requiring manufacturers to have a third-party agency do the plan review first. We're going to see how that goes. I'm hopeful that we can continue to stay on top of it, but we're going to leave the option in for third-party agencies to continue to do plan reviews. Now, one of the things that I will caveat is that as we start to take plans back, we're going to continue to audit some of the third-party agencies. And if we see concerns with a third-party agency or a manufacturer's set of plans, we may require that as we do, if we're primary on the plans, and we start to see some concerns, we're going to kick it back and say, you guys need to run it through a third-party agency first, right? Because what we've seen in the past is that sometimes manufacturers use us as their editing, and we just don't have time to do that on a regular basis. So that's my goal though, is to and Donnie's goal is to start taking some of those plan review process back. Manufacturers, clarifications, and third-party agency on-site certification of units. Some other changes in that chapter 4 section. Chapter 5 is just some clarifications on sellers. Chapter 6 is some clarifications on installers and some changes around tiny homes. Chapter 7 is foundations. It's a new chapter like we've talked about before. We've pulled that out, and then the old chapter 7, which was enforcement, becomes the new chapter 8. One of the things by jumping, and this affects Tracy more than anybody else, Tracy, by changing to the 2021 code set, all those things that we have added to Appendix A in the 2018 code was really from the 2021 code set. So you'll see a lot of red in the change from the 2018 Appendix A to the 2021 Appendix AQ, but it's primarily deletions. We also we're still trying to make it as user-friendly as possible. So take a look at that and let us know what you think. Any questions on the changes that we're going to be rolling out? And let me jump to the next slide, because that's the schedule slide. And this is the meat and potatoes of the whole thing, right? Once Donnie gets through his proofreading and double checking of everything, we'll get this out to everybody. I'm going to get it up on the website. We're going to send a notice to all interested parties, basically every email we got of the new proposed rules. I have to file this with the Secretary of State by 8/31/24, and I'm out the 30th and 31st. Well, I'm out Thursday and Friday next week, so I've got to get it done by Wednesday of next week. It'll be published in the Colorado Register on the 10th of September. And then the State Housing Board hearing will be on the 8th That gives us an effective date no earlier than 11/30, but I'm going to write into it that the effective date be the 1st of January of 2025. And that's really all I had for the day.
I think the big thing, Sam, is that like everybody needs to read this. This is always the step that should take the longest amount of time, but is usually the quickest step
Yeah.
in the process, is seeing the draft of the red lines and providing very immediate feedback on them.
Yep. Because until I go, when I go to press, I can make any changes, right? And that's, so that's the next week deadline is when I go to press, I can make changes. Now I can make changes based on written comments received up until the point where I go to the State Housing Board in whatever date that was that I said, the 8th of September, or 8th of October. So I have time to make changes and recommend that they approve a revised set of rules based on comments that we receive. So we've got a little time, not much, but if there's any big red flags, call me, text me, send me smoke signals. I don't think they are. I've tried to be as upfront and shareable with everything that I possibly could to get to you and have those discussions. So, but for me to get ready for that State Housing Board hearing, I'm going to need a little time before that 8th of October to get that that formal document all to them. I thought I saw Tim's hand go up first.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious if you and Donnie have looked at the potential impact. I know we talked a little bit here and there on the electric ready and solar ready code, but I don't recall that we really talked a lot about that. But in terms of understanding the potential impact and cost impact of that for the manufacturers, really wouldn't be on the EV side of things because that goes into garages, but just on the units themselves. And there is in that code, they have a section in the beginning, the administrative chapter, that talks about 2 potential requests for asking for waivers. And one is for if it's a rebuild on a disaster, and the other one is if the cost to comply exceeds the 2% of labor and materials on mechanical, plumbing, and stuff like that. So I just was asking that question, and if you had information on that, you know, to be able to provide for the TAC group and the manufacturers, I think to be helpful. You don't have a choice; you got to adopt it, but it's more on just what's coming down the line. Thanks.
Tim, I think that's a really good point. The 2% threshold. I know you mentioned that at the last time also, and you're also right. We don't have an option not to adopt it. So in the comments that go into the package, if there are development costs that you guys are concerned about bumping up to the 21 code or bumping up to the or the adoption of solar ready and energy ready model code, that is the perfect place to place them. I can't fix that, I don't think. What I can do, and I'll, you know, is if the wording is confusing in a rule, then, you know, rewrite it for me. I'm happy to take proposed language on doing that. But any comments you send in will be a part of that package that goes to the State Housing Board and a part of the record. Donnie?
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add to his question.
Okay. Well,
I did have. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you're calling me to talk or to finish up. But the thing I did have, it's for everybody, but really more directed to you, Tim, is we do have that section in the tiny home provisions or tiny house provisions for the portion of the code that allows the reduction of insulation in the attic or the ceiling space from the R60. It still allows you to go down to the R30, I believe.
Yes.
Now, the way the code's written, it says for up to 500 square feet or 10% of the I think the living space, but it's whichever is less, right? But I think we're going to have to see if we can. I don't know how we're going to do it. Is we have to write the energy office an exemption and get an approval, or if we could get this thing approved through our rule making process, and if it is a violation, then remove it. But I think we can still go ahead and continue to use that requirement, because let's just say you have a 5,000 square foot house and 10% of that is 500 square feet, but you're saying that 500 square feet of that home is still energy efficient. Why can't we make that the same requirement for a tiny home that's 400 square feet, right?
Right.
I
Yeah,
would think
that's
that it's
huge for
equivalent.
us, Donnie. You guys already know that. That's like huge for us, right?
Donnie,
So
Tracy, we do know, and so Donnie, take a look at the language, and I worked on it just this morning. I'm sorry, bud. What I took out of Appendix AQ in the IRC and what I left in the Appendix AQ, and I left R30 in Appendix AQ.
okay, yeah, because I think the
Or
way
tiny
that we
homes.
the way we exempted it was you can use that section and still be able to use it, even though you're not, even though that the square footage is, I guess, greater than 10% of the total square footage of the house, right? But yeah, being able to still use that exemption, I think we can still argue that it's still equivalent to, like again, the example of a 5,000 square foot home. It's not going to be any more or less efficient than that house for a tiny home.
Yep.
Yeah, that sure makes a lot of sense. Going down that path, I'd bounce that off Adam Berry, but I mean, it's all about the intent, you know, and just because it's small, it's still going to be like very efficient, you know, as Tracy's talked about numerous times. So I think
The other thing,
seems like we're on track.
Yep, thank you, Tim. The other thing I do not see a way of getting around, and that's not the right way to say that. The other big challenge going forward is that the new codes require blower door test and duct testing. And so that is going to be an impact to every manufacturer and every registered seller for those units to get placed.
Yeah. And there's a third test too that's required, but you have to meet a certain scenario, which is a duct and home test.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah. I don't
And
think
Sam, I can't. I'm driving, so I didn't raise my hand. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was gonna have a couple of questions and a comment, if you don't mind. One comment I was just gonna say is I think there's certain parts of this energy stuff that I won't want to speak for the other sellers and manufacturers on the phone, but if there was some concern about like Tim was talking about, you know, calculated cost and some other things, I'm going to say that I guess I don't feel that that's going to make nobody really cares about that. So the estimated cost of most of this stuff, like the things you're talking about, I think it's pretty well understood and well known. It's going to add a bunch of costs, but I think there's absolutely no way around any of that because it's getting shoved down everybody's throat to pay the piper. So at my standpoint, I'm not going to give any comments about estimated cost or calculating cost of adding this stuff because I think it's understood it costs a bunch of money, but I think it's going to fall on deaf ears. Second of all, it would be good to understand, or maybe you can say, if we go back to allowing direct to the state plan reviews, that's great. I think we have a double cost and a double whammy right now. But if you could communicate, or maybe you already plan to, what the expected, you know, time in the queue is going to be. You know, historically, it was a 10-day thing or whatever for it to come up, and maybe you don't know, or maybe it's going to be better than that, or maybe it's going to be worse, or maybe it depends on who you are. But I think it would be good to kind of understand that, or at least have an understanding of what the time in the queue is, because even if it was longer or shorter or worse or better, it was always kind of good to have I guess, an understanding of what the time in the queue would be or could be.
Yeah, and
And,
Mike, I'm thinking that it's going to be the same. The thing that really affected us in the past was the resubmittals. So, you know, when you have 80% of the plans being resubmitted, your 5-day typical resubmittal timeline goes to 10 days, and your 10-day plan review goes to 20 days, right? And it just gets bigger and larger timeframes. So, I think with we actually just got word today that we have a position that's ready to go for another plans examiner. So that's going to be posted here pretty soon. So that the goal is to get that third person hired, and then at least get them trained up to a stage where we feel comfortable that we can open it back up, because we don't want to open up the floodgates and then find ourselves back into a hole again, right? Because then we're going to have to do what we did in the past. We don't want to do that. So we're hoping
no,
to
I
get
don't
this
disagree.
possible.
I think that having an understanding of what that is would be good, but also I think one of the hard, or maybe, the easy outs for the office, not saying, I'm not pointing any fingers, but it also, the time frame in the queue to look at, since there was an understanding that it was 10 days to get reviewed, but if you had a resubmit, it was sort of like, it could be an indeterminate amount of time. That always challenges. So I guess, and along those lines, I told the governor's lady is that it would be
Sorry, Mike, you're breaking up. I can't. Can anybody else hear what he's saying?
some type of
Keep going, Mike. You're back with us now, I think, but yeah, you broke up for a minute.
oh, okay, I broke up. I think it would be good long term. I think Nate alluded to with the governor's lady, certifying third party plans to be, state stamped, or, alternatively, giving a shortened, expedited time frame, like a renewal time frame to a third party, any number of things to kind of better utilize that. I know we utilize it as a stopgap measure during this, which I think was great. I think it was well timed, and it was statutory or regular party like other states that we definitely need to look at down the road.
Absolutely. Well, we're open to looking at anything down the road. And I guess you're headed west.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. All right, Mike. Thank you. Anybody else have anything? All right. Well, thank you all. I'll look for an email from me. Let me know if I can do anything for you.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.